You weren't always the man people whisper about now. Once, you were just a kid trying to understand how the world really worked. You noticed something early that most people ignored. The people with the most power weren't always the smartest. They weren't always the hardest working. But they almost always had one thing: money. You watched how people treated wealth differently. A rich man could walk into a room and everyone would listen. A rich man could make mistakes and still be respected. You decided early that one day, you would be that man. Not the one asking for permission, the one everyone else had to impress. In your early 20s, you were confident, charming, and ambitious. You didn't come from the same elite background as the people you wanted to join, but that never stopped you. Confidence can open doors that credentials cannot. You spoke like someone who already belonged in powerful rooms. You talked about markets, investments, and hidden opportunities. You made people feel like they were part of something exclusive, something secret, and powerful people love secrets. Eventually, you found a mentor, a billionaire who already had the life you wanted. Connections everywhere: Wall Street, politicians, media executives. He saw something in you. Maybe it was ambition, maybe it was boldness, or maybe he simply saw someone who understood the rules of power. He introduced you to people who mattered, and suddenly the doors that once seemed impossible began to open. You started managing money for incredibly wealthy clients: hedge funds, billionaires, power brokers. Some of them barely understood the investments you described, but they trusted you because you seemed like someone who belonged in their world. And the money began flowing. Millions, then tens of millions, then hundreds of millions. Soon your lifestyle began to reflect it. A mansion in Manhattan, a private jet, connections to some of the most powerful people in the world. Politicians, celebrities, royal families, technology billionaires. Your social circle started to look like a list of people who shaped global events. And the more powerful your friends became, the more powerful you appeared. But the real currency of your world wasn't just money, it was access. You were the man who could introduce people to each other. A billionaire to a politician to a media mogul, a celebrity to an investor. People came to your parties because they knew someone important would be there. Your homes became legendary gathering places. Your New York mansion hosted dinners filled with powerful conversations. Your private island in the Caribbean became something else entirely. A place far away from reporters, far away from cameras, far away from questions. Guests arrived on your private plane. They walked beaches surrounded by luxury. And they assumed the rules that existed everywhere else didn't apply here. Because that's how power often works. The richer and more connected someone becomes, the more they begin to believe the world has different rules for them. For a while, everything seemed untouchable. Your wealth grew. Your connections deepened. Your influence expanded. But rumors began appearing. At first, they were quiet, just whispers among journalists, investigators asking strange questions. Some young women began telling stories about what happened inside your world. Stories that painted a very different picture of the life you had built. You denied everything. You hired lawyers with reputations strong enough to challenge governments. And for a while it worked. Investigations slowed, cases stalled. Your connections helped protect you. In 2008, the situation should have ended your career completely. The accusations were serious. There were witnesses. There were testimonies. Evidence that shocked the public. But your legal team negotiated a deal that stunned many people watching from the outside. Instead of facing the full weight of the charges, you received an agreement that dramatically reduced the consequences. Many prosecutors later said the deal was far too generous. Many victims believed justice had failed, but for you, it reinforced a belief you had held for years. Power protects power. You served a short sentence, but even then, the punishment looked very different from what most people imagined. You were allowed to leave jail during the day. You returned to comfortable surroundings in the evening. And when the sentence ended, you returned to your life. Your wealth remained. Your properties remained. And some of your powerful connections remained too. But something had changed. The world was beginning to pay closer attention. Journalists were digging deeper into old records. Victims were becoming more determined to speak publicly, and investigators began reopening files that had once been closed. For years, you continued living as if nothing could truly touch you. You still hosted gatherings. You still traveled on your jet. You still surrounded yourself with influential people. But the whispers were getting louder. Your name was appearing in more headlines, and the questions were becoming harder to ignore. Then in 2019, everything changed. Federal investigators reopened the case with new evidence. This time, the investigation moved quickly. Agents gathered documents, they spoke to witnesses, and eventually they came for you. You were arrested and charged with serious federal crimes. Suddenly, the powerful world that once welcomed you grew very quiet. The same people who once attended your parties stopped returning calls. Public figures began distancing themselves. Some claimed they barely knew you. Others said they had cut ties years ago. The network that once made you seem untouchable began dissolving overnight. You were placed inside a federal detention center. For the first time in decades, you were completely cut off from the life you had built. No private jets, no island, no luxurious mansions, just concrete walls. Time to think. For years, you had believed that wealth and influence made you immune to consequences. You believed connections would protect you forever. But power has one rule. It protects you only while you remain useful. Once the risk of association becomes greater than the benefit, even powerful allies disappear. The empire you built began collapsing in public. Investigations expanded. More victims spoke out. Your name became part of a global conversation about wealth, power, and accountability. People no longer talked about your investments, or your connections, or your lavish lifestyle. They talked about what your story represented. A warning. About how influence can hide wrongdoing. About how systems can fail when powerful people protect each other. About how money can create the illusion of invincibility. Your story became something else entirely. Not a tale of success, but a symbol of how power, without limits, can corrupt completely. Because somewhere along the way, between the mansions and the private island, between the private jets and the endless pursuit of influence, you stopped asking a very important question. Not whether you could do something, but whether you should. And once that question disappeared, everything else followed. Your name is no longer remembered as the name of a financier, or a billionaire, or a socialite among the powerful. It is remembered as a symbol of the dark side of wealth and influence, a reminder that power can build extraordinary lives, but it can also destroy them. This was your life, your rise, your fall, your transformation into something far darker than you ever imagined. This was your life, as a billionaire who lost his soul.